and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my road chop niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day pimping America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclose of it, close out the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit bitch, if not better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas and get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bunch of great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at ya, I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me $1 billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children's children.
And we are live. Welcome to Voice of Rebellion Radio. This is your host, Chris J. Tonight on Sunday night, November 20th. Here, it is a chilly night, even here in Florida. East Coast. I imagine most of the East Coast is pretty cold tonight, so enjoy this radio show in the warmth of your house. I'm sure in some places the warmth of your house might be a little cooler tonight, as it's probably pretty hard to keep your house cool when I'm warm when it's that cold. But just enjoy me talking about the Middle East tonight, in a very hot region. You can picture yourself over there in the dunes of the Iraqi desert. Just take away all the bombs and all the military vehicles, and just imagine a peaceful setting over there, where maybe that will be what will come of Iraq within a few years. We can hope when the Iranians finally defeat ISIS there and they establish a solid relationship with Iran, which seems to be happening. That's what this show's about, is the Iranian shift in the Middle East, how even their once mortal enemy, Iraq, is now one of their allies. You have Yemen became pro-Iran. You have Syria has remained pro-Iran. You have Lebanon, the growing political influence of Iran there. And all this effort and money that's being put by the Western militaries, the Western governments, in order to shape the Middle East, and it's going to waste. And it's your taxpayer dollars that's going to do this failed. And it's good that it's failing, because the result of it would be the entire Middle East looking like Saudi Arabia. We here in America have very little knowledge of the Middle East. A lot of Americans, and they have it all twisted. For example, they say that Iran and Al Qaeda are collaborating with each other, but the truth is that Iran and Al Qaeda are mortal enemies, and Saudi Arabia and Al Qaeda are collaborating with each other. Saudi Arabia being an American ally. In Iran, they have a Shia majority. Al-Qaeda, one of the main things that Al-Qaeda is goals is to eliminate the Shia population. As with all these Wahhabist organizations, that they plan to limit the Shia population and put their own version of Islam, which is neither Shia or Sunni, called Wahhabism. Wahhabism comes from the clerics of Saudi Arabia, these radical clerics that preach hate, violence, and they misinterpret the Quran entirely into this version that is so far from what's taught in their holy book. It's kind of like what the Westboro Baptist Church does with the Bible, or what the Zionists do with their own religion. And what is probably should be noted is that the Wahhabist sect of the Muslim population is very, very small. Now, the Zionists, yes, there's of the entire Jewish population on the planet, the Zionist population is much higher than is the Muslim population inside of the the Wahhabist population inside of the Muslim population on this planet. We have in this country, they're indoctrinated from a young age, Jewish people, into believing that the state of Israel is necessary for the Jewish people, and ignoring some of the stuff in their own religion and ignoring the human rights involved in the fact that they remove people from their land and forced them out and bombed them and put them behind a wall. In all, it's just a state of murder, and it's a fascist state. But they believe it to be this democratic, peaceful country. But the truth is, the Arabs are treated as far lower than the Jews there. In fact, the Arabs are treated practically like animals, because that's what the rabbis tell them, is that Arabs are animals. Arabs are subhuman. Americans are goyim. We're lower, according to the Zionist rabbis. And we're just to be to serve them. We're like cattle, according to them. But we're not cattle, obviously. We're people. But that's not how they see us. And a lot of Americans are brainwashed at a young age to think Iran's the enemy. And out of these two countries I described, one being a fascist state that has disdain for most of the population really outside of its country. Definitely they see them as lower. And a country that that's democratic and allows their Christian and Jewish population to live peacefully in their country, and hasn't attacked anyone unprovoked since the Islamic Revolution. In 1979, the Iraq-Iran war, they didn't provoke. The Iraq invaded them in the 1980s with armed weapons, armed money. Saddam Hussein did that. Saddam Hussein was our ally who did these horrible things in Iran, and that war that was started killed over 1 million people. The Middle East completely restructured the Middle East, and now it kind of set the stage for a somewhat of a split between the Iranian side and then the Iraqi side, but you could also say the Saudi side, but the Saudi side, the American side, the American-influenced countries versus the non-American-influenced countries. Then when Saddam was out the picture, it became purely Saudi Arabia versus Iran, with the United States and Israel influencing Saudi Arabia not acting on its own, while Iran has an alliance with Russia. So it's really a major proxy war in the Middle East that's happening between Russia and the United States. In Iran, we see it between the Iranian government and these Iranian resistance groups that they're being helped by the United States. That's the United States part in Iran, but in Syria is where we really see this proxy war, where we see the government of Syria trying to restore order, and the democratic government that existed before, or that still exist in power, versus the versus the United States supported terrorists that they call rebels. While they dispute the fact that they're all terrorists, they say that some of them are moderate. There's no evidence to show that any group inside of the opposition inside Syria are moderate. In fact, every single group inside of Syria has done horrible war crimes. Every single rebel group, I should say, has done horrible war crimes, including they've been accused of using chemical weapons, beheading civilians, targeting minorities, crucifying Christians, and much, much more. These are the people that they tell you that we should support. With our dollars, with our taxpayer dollars, we're going to train and arm these guys to eventually take over Syria. Now, I can imagine with all this Islamic extremist influence inside of the rebel groups inside Syria, what kind of future does Syria have? And I am alarmed I'm alarmed by the by the ignorance of the American people into knowing about of the knowledge of the Syrian conflict. So much so that the media tells them that they should back this war against Assad, and they go for it. No evidence. They don't say, "Hey, what's the evidence that Assad's done any of this?" They just went along with it like they did with Iraq. There was no real evidence that Saddam had the WMDs. Now, that's not to compare Saddam Hussein and Bashar al-Assad, as that Saddam Hussein was, in reality, a dictator and a person that persecuted the Kurdish population in his country. But let's well remember that Saddam Hussein was once an American ally. Bashar al-Assad wasn't. That's one of the major differences between the two, and that's Bashar al-Assad there's no real evidence that committed human rights violations during his regime besides Western accusations. But from an overall consensus, there's not a two-sided agreement like with Saddam Hussein. There's not just Americans, but the Iranians and people around the world generally believe Saddam Hussein to have done the actions he did in the 80s. Now, the United States will admit that he did those actions in the 80s, but they won't say that he did it with the United States approval. The gas in the Kurds was done with American approval. He got the green light to do it. Even the invasion of Kuwait, he had the green light to do it. So in the end, the United States decided to go against him and stop the invasion and protected Kuwait, another American ally, which there was a standoff for about 10 years or so between sanctions and whatnot. There was like this uneasy peace agreements that were made the year before the invasion, and then in 2003 the invasion happens. Now, I find it funny that people say that the Iran deal is so is too lenient on Iran, but the truth is that it pretty much gives the United States unlimited access to Iran, and Western inspectors unlimited access to Iran. It also it says we'll drop the sanctions, but they haven't been dropped. They haven't followed up on that part of the agreement of dropping the sanctions against Iran. They're still there, and they're crippling. Terrible economic sanctions on the country. So, really, if the Iran deal was to fall apart, it would be on the Americans' end. And Trump is one of his major talking pieces. And I say a talking piece, as that's what he, throughout the campaign, he seems to have about 5 or 6 things they brought up in almost every speech. And that was one of them. And, some of the stuff you could almost get behind. Someone that knew, when he started talking about Syria and the fact about the rebels, we all know these people. I'm like, this is like that's he's actually talking a little bit more sense than the gibberish that comes out of these other foreign policy think tanks over time. But then he starts talking about the Iran deal, and it's complete nonsense. It's stuff right out of AIPAC. Is that this is dangerous? This deal, we need to completely revise it. We need to take away their money. We're gonna, they're getting $150 billion a year, which we're not giving them anything. We're not giving them what we gave them. In reality, is we're going to drop the sanctions, which will free up their economy to maybe produce $150 billion more a year. It's the only way I could figure the promise of this money, because I know that's not happening, because the United States doesn't work that way. They don't give huge sums of money like that to follow their game plan. It's like you either follow it or they come in with the bombs. And I don't think that I don't think that this is an exception to that. The Iran deal is it's a farce of agreement, really. It's just an agreement to make it seem like we're going to play the peaceful route. But I can imagine within about 1 year, we're going to be there and soldiers will be on the ground in Iran. I don't think that we're going to go too far into a Trump presidency without war breaking out. It would have been the same as Clinton. The game plan has already been set. Now they just have a different person than we expected. We expected, all us people here in alternative media practically expected that Hillary Clinton would be the one that they would select, but then they selected Donald Trump. And Donald Trump also says that he claims that he'll have a different stance on Russia, and he seemed to be talking something that wasn't gibberish about Russia, and saying that Russia and the United States need to work together, and that we're going to be friendly with Russia. But then you look at that, okay, Donald Trump's plan in order to attain friendship with Russia is that we're going to strike back at one of their biggest allies in the world. One of their top 3 allies in the world. I would say Russia is probably 3 biggest allies in the world. One of them is Iran. Another one's Syria. And another one, if we got to put a third one in there somewhere, it was Brazil. That was probably their number 2 behind Iran, or Brazil was number 1, then Iran. Now that Brazil is no longer a strong Russian ally due to the coup recently, the parliamentary coup that they had, it's probably going to be, I would say it could be Venezuela, just because the fact of the high amount of oil that they produce and that the location more than anything, that because it's closer to the United States, they like to have a little bit more of their presence over here, so they have to have one. Cuba used to be that ally for their presence over here, but in reality, I think that Cuba has weakened over the years, or it's definitely lost ground compared to Venezuela. Now that Venezuela is a much more powerful country than it used to be. Just on military power, it could be a regional player, and oil, that they have more oil than Saudi Arabia. Russia keeps them a pretty close ally. Now, what does that have to do with... I'll scratch that. Probably their 3rd biggest ally is probably Belarus, because that's like their European ally. That it's the only real European ally they have. Hungary as well, I guess, but strong European ally. Belarus, Lukashenko, and Putin have been friends for a long time, and Belarus is a former Soviet republic that's now a strong Russian ally. They lost, some of the influence in Eastern Europe with Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania now are drifted away from Russia, and it became strong EU countries. It's disgusting what's going on in those countries, that they're allowing the United States to use their countries as the staging for a battleground, because they are taunting Russia right there. They're putting all their vehicles real close, all their soldiers real close in Eastern Europe, and they're just hoping Russia pounces, and that would start War III right in their own countries. But they're very stupid to allow the United States to do these exercises in their countries. And the people, instead of rising up and protesting, I see a lot of these people over there in these countries, the Baltic states, they're celebrating Nazism and the SS, and what it's about is a slap in the face to Russia, is that they're trying to taunt Russia, really, in a way, and say a lot of people that are on the pro-American troll side of the internet seems to like to equate Russia with the Soviet Union. The Russia today was the Soviet Union, or the Bolshevik Russia, which is also the Soviet Union. That's the Bolsheviks are who created Russia, or Soviet Russia, but failed to ignore all of the many things that are different today with the situation. For example, was that Soviet Russia did not have very good relations with Iran because there was the very apparent ideological difference between the Iranian government, a religious semi-democracy, I would still call it a democracy, and the Soviet Union, which a dictatorship ruled with a ruling party and atheistic. That was one of the major differences, is that Iran wouldn't accept a relationship with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union actually backed Iraq in the Iraq-Iran war. The world's 2 superpowers were against Iran, and Iran still won. The biggest ally was North Korea, and they were still able to pull off that win. So that's why. But people say that Iran and Iraq are comparable situations, and that the United States will be able to roll over Iran, and they'll be done in a few months, and that Ahmadinejad, which I'm probably guessing will be in power when this happens, because the elections are coming up soon, and I don't think that Rouhani is going to win. I think